This is a Culture Inject production.
All right, welcome back to a new episode of Part of Us. Today's episode is about producing our own En Vogue album. From picking the producers to brainstorming themes, we're covering it all. Download episodes of Part of Us on Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or listen on YouTube. Check out our socials at Part of Us Fancast on Twitter and En Vogue Craze on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Let's get into it. Let's start by talking big picture. So, are you thinking your album would be a full-length LP or an EP or what?
Well, for me, I have nothing against extended plays, because I think you've got a lot of great extended plays out there that work really well. But I think in this day and age, because I think they can sort of operate as like endless stopgaps where they just never end. I would prefer a full-length long player. A more conceived album. I think albums at the end of the day, that format is the best, I think, for an artist realizing their vision, to me, unless the extended plays lead to an album, like knowingly lead to an album.
You know, I think the cool thing about an EP though is like you can just, I think with EPs there's no pressure, right? So it's like if it doesn't become a success, if people don't love it, you can always say, oh, well, it's not an album, it doesn't count, it was just something on the side. You know what I mean? And I think it gives you a little bit more room to like experiment or try something different. If you want to do something that maybe your audience isn't used to, you can kind of throw it out there, and if they bite, then you can move forward. If they don't, you can say, okay, we were just playing.
I definitely think there's benefits to that, but to me, I think an artist should never create in a reactive space that way, because you're allowing your audience to dictate to you what you should be doing. And I think once you sort of upend that delicate balance between how you engage with your audience and you show respect for them, but you don't let them influence what you're doing, that's like a Pandora's box. You can't close it. So if my thing is, if you're not ready to do a project, then don't embark upon it. And once you're ready, you have to commit to it, stay the course, and move forward, because, not everyone's going to like what you do, but people will always respect the fact that you committed to what you did. If that's if that's where your muse is taking you.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing about fans is that, fans are always going to have varying opinions. Like, no one's ever going to be 100% satisfied with anything that you do, right? Mm-hmm. And you can have some sectors of your fan base that love something, and then the other side is like, please never do that again. So ultimately, I mean, an artist has to please themselves. But so like, if you were creating this album and crafting the sound, like what elements would you want to include? Like, what do you think is going to define that En Vogue signature sound?
Well, I mean, if I just coming off of the last record, Electric Cafe, what I liked about that record was, as with every album, I feel like it sort of has, it looks forward to where we are in the moment in terms of Black popular culture, Black popular music, and just broader popular culture and popular music. And then it still has that En Vogue twist where you're getting, really great, vocal work. You're getting, what I would like to say, competent, tuneful production. And it would sort of be the same thing, but I would love to see them return to, and they maintain, I guess, in this instance, that blend between working with other outside producers and writers while still leaving room to do their work with Foster and McElroy, who, still do good work. I know that sometimes that can be a controversial thing to say, but I think they've still done some good stuff. And I think there's room for that, but I don't think that they should be the only ones considered. I think, again, go for a broad pool. And I think both Electric Cafe and EV3 were better for that when they allowed themselves to expand and still expand to new influences, but then maintain some of their established ones. I think that makes for a good mix. So that, for me, makes the bedrock of where I would start. A good writing, production sort of click. And then I'd like to see the ladies do some writing as well.
You brought up an interesting point though, because I was having this conversation maybe last week about artists who utilize one main producer, right? Like if you think about like a Janet with Jimmy and Terry, En Vogue from their early albums, it was mostly Denny and Tommy. So you prefer the approach of kind of like working with multiple artists versus kind of like that one consistent figure?
I'm not saying that I wouldn't want one. I think there are lots of artists I've enjoyed who have actually worked with one producer. Like for example, as a Carly Simon fan, I like that when you look at her canon, you can sort of break her albums into groups of usually 2 or 3 or 4, typically 2s and 3s, where she'd worked with a producer over an expanse of that amount of records. So like Arif Mardin did her albums Boys in the Trees and Spy. The former had her version of You Belong to Me on it. And then prior to that, like Richard Perry, did sort of what was considered her classic commercial blockbuster, like that trilogy. So it was like No Secrets, Hotcakes, and Playing Possum. He would return to the fold later and do her Moonlight Serenade album in 2005, years later. But I think I'm open to either way. I mean, if they want to bring in someone completely new, just one producer, let's say, who's one that I really like right now. I'm not sure if you're a Jessie Ware fan, but James Ford has done some great work with her on her last 2 records. I'd love to see them do a record with James Ford.
She has a song about diamonds or pearls or
pearls. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has some. Yeah, I do like her stuff.
Yeah, she's actually right up your alley. All of her stuff is pretty great, but I would love to see them, pick a producer like that. Dim Joints did some great stuff with them on Electric Cafe. Yeah, that's one of my favorites, and I liked some of the work he did on the Janet album. That's how I first came across him, was his work on Unbreakable, and I liked a lot of the work he did on Unbreakable. So I think that he would do great work with them. It'd be nice to see them just expand and do something completely different. So either way, I'm open. I'm basically open. But what about you? What would you like? What do you want to see? What's the foundation for your ideal En Vogue album? Where would you start? What's going to be what you sort of use as your launching point or staging ground for it?
I would really want to do something like I would want them to be up tempo. Like I would really look at. I miss the era where R&B artists. Because I think what happens is when you become a certain age as an R&B artist, they automatically put you into like the mid-tempo ballad era of your career. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, where are the feel-good records? Where are the records that make you want to get up and dance and feel like you're in love and like, I miss those types of songs. And when I think about like En Vogue records that I love like the up tempo of like This Is Your Life or a My Lovin' or anything from Born to Sing. So I would think about putting them with a classic producer that could really cater to their strengths in that area. For me, I think about Jimmy and Terry. I think they're really just great producers that I always wished En Vogue worked with. Them joints, I do like what they did on what he did on Electric Cafe. So I would love to hear more of that. But also there's another producer called who's that producer that works with Victoria Monet?
Oh, what a record. I'm gonna check out, let me pull that up. That is such a fantastic album. I actually think she straddles that space really well between up tempo and sort of down tempo, and in general, just the, there's DeMille, who I love, Durrance DeMille, which I first learned of him because of his work on Janet Jackson's other record, Discipline. He did Feedback. And, he did it with Rodney Jerkins. He's great. And then, who else did Victoria work with? Jeff Gittleman, who's actually on the new Jennifer Lopez album. Kay Tronada was on the new, he's on Victoria Monet. So yeah, I mean, I think En Vogue, I like them up tempo. Reach for Me is a great track. I think, but I think textures are always important And I think, that is always important to have it, something be sort of multifaceted. So, what other sounds and styles would you like them to do? Are you looking for them to sort of stay in a specific R&B pocket, or do you want them to be have a broader R&B sort of expansive pocket? I'm thinking like a Janelle Monáe kind of sort of vibe where they're trying just different sounds within the R&B sphere, or do you want them to branch out even further?
I mean, one of the things I like about En Vogue is that they've tried a little bit of everything, right? Mm-hmm. So they've done, dance hall and rock, and so I think I would love for them to like explore different sounds within the R&B genre, but not, being afraid of stepping out. But like, I feel like if they were to do another rock song, it would be like, okay, you're trying to recreate Free Your Mind. So, I don't think it would hit the same. But whatever is like natural, like I wouldn't be against them doing a little something with a little country twang, right? Because Terry is from, she's a Southern gal. So, incorporating those influences that are natural, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the rock thing would be a bad thing. I think we just have to sort of open I think the problem with any genre, even the pop genre, is that people sort of get caught with thinking that a genre only has one sort of permutation. It can only be one thing. And I think you can still adhere, especially with like what I call a more grounded genre like R&B, you can adhere to those cultural rules so you don't lose your core audience, but you can push at the boundaries and borders of what is deemed acceptable. So for me, again, it comes back to the word texture and also tonal variance. So I'd love to see them experiment with dance and different electronic or synthesized textures, as much as I'd like to see them do some more organic band-based stuff. Like, I was talking with one of my best friends before I got on to chat with you this evening about Khalees's last record from 10 years ago, Food. And I love that when she did that record, it was her coming off of Flesh Tone, which is a huge departure, like really hard Italo house, electronic, really, really very different from what she had done before. She had dabbled with electronic and synthesized textures, but nothing like what she did. Nothing prepared anyone for Flesh Tone. So then when she pivoted with Food, the follow-up, she went back to her R&B sound, but it was like in this sort of band-based, organic kind of thing. And it was just great hearing that voice in that environment. I'd love to hear En Vogue doing something with more of a kind of a funk vibe where you hear like, a rhythm section. I think they would, or strings. I think they would sound fantastic with that. Maybe like a jazz sort of combo thing. I think that because it's going to bring out different elements in their voice.
What about themes and concepts? So like En Vogue is known for like different, female empowerment anthems and talking about, different topics on all of their albums. Like, would you have the group take a bold leap into uncharted territory when it comes to themes and concepts? Or would you want them to kind of keep it more general?
I guess it's really up to what they're comfortable with. I really want to see them just try to make it a bit more personal or just write more. I think that's really going to be the key, is trying to find a narrative that inspires them personally. So they want to bring that to the project. I would not be opposed to a thematically centered record or something like a song cycle, which I guess the closest that we got to that was Masterpiece Theater. But that was more in the production side of things versus the actual like lyrical structure. So, I mean, I think it's really up to them. There is something there to be mined because, Cindy has gone through a divorce. So there might be a darker element that they could explore lyrically in terms of, difficulties in love and relationships, being older women, and because Rona's married, but she has no children. Terry is single, has no children. And Cindy is divorced with 4 adult children now. You have these very different sort of perspectives on life and love. So it'd be nice to see them move into that space, or even to maybe dabble in something socio-political. But if they're going to do it, they have to make sure they do it in a really sharp, incisive way, so it doesn't become like a pablum or sort of like patronizing or kind of silly. But I've always thought they've threaded the social consciousness needle mostly well in their stuff. So I think that they could do it if they wanted to. What about you? How do you feel about it?
I think I would want them to do something like female empowerment centered, but like female empowerment from like multiple angles, right? So female empowerment from like the angle of like love, life, society, like, just an overall like concept of like how women have to like navigate society, I guess, and putting it in song. But not in a way of it's like, pay us what we're worth as women. Like, no, but like, I mean like the full story of like just all the different aspects of womanhood, from, how you deal with the man that did you wrong to like, having to work and come home and bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan too. Like,
well, no, I mean, but that goes back. You have these three different women with three different life perspectives who are all older, but they, even within that spectrum, Roan is kind of the baby. So you can bring in those elements. And if they don't feel comfortable writing, this is where being a good interpreter or song curator comes into play. You can, they could review tracks depending on the A&R of the label that they're with, or they can commission to have things written, where they sit with someone and say, this is what we're feeling. And sort of, they may not write, but give input in how the song is shaped with the songwriters that they pick or the writer producers they pick to write for them. I think that's important. So they can have a hand on the material that they're singing. So, I mean, the sky is really the limit. And I think because, like I said, En Vogue are in a great position in the sense of that they've had these different things happen in their personal lives, especially with Rona and Cindy in the last 5 to 6 years, marriage, divorce, they can bring those things into the record if they want. And I think that would make it an even richer experience.
That's so interesting, though, thinking about Rona and Cindy, because it's like an interesting juxtaposition, right? Because, like, Cindy
right.
into the marriage and Rona's a newlywed. Like,
It's fascinating, especially because Cindy's marriage defined so much of how she was perceived by the public. And I don't, obviously I'm sure like when they were singing happier love songs, she was probably pulling from that place of joy. But then again, even if they were singing a more fictional variance of that or the negative side of romance or love, maybe she was pulling from a space that she could relate to, because no union is ever perfect. It's always something you're working at. So, and I think it would also be important to have them look back over how they've expressed themselves with the previous records to see what they would want to bring from those records, but also what they would want to leave behind. Because you want to maintain that thread of consistency of your previous work, but you also don't want to completely repeat yourself. So it's a delicate balancing act.
Well, are there any artists that you want to bring to the album to elevate it even further? Like, do you have any like dream collaborations, duets? Like, do you want a What a Man Part 2?
For me, collaboration has to be organic to work. Don't care what genre it's in. So if it feels A&R, like it's something that's being done to sort of elicit attention or clicks, I lose interest. But I'd love to see them do some work with Brandy, because I think Brandy's sort of in that orbit with them. Well, I think the link that would hotline her in is because I know that her and Rona had done some work or collaboration on some things that they were never released formally. But I think that might be a nice sort of segue. I think there's so many different people you could mention. Victoria Monet, if you're wanting to go for a classic thing, it'd be nice to have them maybe work with maybe like Missy. But ultimately, I think for En Vogue, I think they have enough charisma, uniqueness, and talent, to quote the great, RuPaul, that they can stand on their own, feet, flat-footed, and deliver a record, on their own. But I'm not opposed to any collaboration as long as it's organic.
I love a good collaboration, though. Like, I said this on the last episode, but I feel like we're overdue for a Boyz II Men collaboration.
That could work if it's done right, I think. I would agree. Because they're a 3-piece now, too, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, that could work if they did that right.
I think that would be really interesting. Also, since you mentioned Missy, I think about what Missy did with when she remixed Tony's Do It a couple of years ago. I really like that. And
yeah, I think Missy would be a good fit.
Yeah, it would be because she has that nostalgia factor, but she also, I think, understands what's current and what sounds fresh.
I agree. She's got a good tonal pulse between the two. Yeah, I would agree with that actually, completely.
And then maybe like a LL Cool J, just for the nostalgia.
That could be nice.
Just for the nostalgia of it. Like,
I mean, I think if you did that right, he hasn't done an album in 11 years now because his last record was Authentic in 2013. I'm an LL Cool J fan, so.
Well, if we're thinking about the track list, like, sequencing is important for like the pacing of an album.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you see that going? Like, do you like the album to start with like a banger, a heater, like a head hits you over the head, track one, or are you more like a slow burn, come in with something nice and mellow and work your way into something bigger?
It depends. I'm not opposed to either approach. What I look for there's I've got a 2-part to this answer for you. For me, the biggest thing is just how well the record hangs together and that it's well sequenced. Because like
the sequencing can make or break the album.
Right. That was what I was just about to say. And if the sequencing is off, even by just a track or two, that can make a difference between a great record and a good or okay record. And so that really has to be the thing in terms of how the songs hang together as a body of work. And more often than not, usually a first single for me, like thinking of the forthcoming Beyonce album, as much as I think Texas Hold'em is cool and 16 Carriages is great, I'm actually looking forward to seeing how the record, within the larger body of work. I think that's really going to be, because like when she did that with Act 1 on Renaissance, Break My Soul, I enjoyed Break My Soul as a standalone track, but when you hear it within the larger body of work, it's phenomenal. That shift from Cuff It into Energy and then to Break My Soul is just that, it's a beautiful transition. The whole way that record is sequenced. And even though 4 is my favorite Beyonce album personally,
which I thought the sequencing on that was terrible. But
well, no, that's yes, I would not disagree. I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's just frustrating. Is a more term I would use. But Renaissance is Beyonce's best record in terms of how well the record is sequenced. So relating that to En Vogue, that's what I would look for. But my second part is that, now this is just me being the music snob that I am. I have to acknowledge that. I like what I call the flowering technique. So a record that does this is one of my Spice ladies, Emma Bunton. She had her third solo record, Life in Mono. And it starts off quietly, but as you move through the record, you sort of feel that the record is kind of building it's almost like a flower. And so by the time we reach, I think it's the 6th track on the record, I Wasn't Looking When I Found Love, you literally feel and hear the record just open. It just opens and it just continues to blossom and blossom. You just get lost in this sort of rapturous experience of like the album flowering, and just it really opens. I think in a Victoria Monet, the aforementioned Jaguar 2, I think that has a similar thing. So for me, it's just as a music headphone guy, a good surround sound guy, like hearing records that do that would be fantastic. So I'd love to sort of shift En Vogue into that, to really having them sit down and make a record that you can do that with, because as I mentioned, EV3 is my favorite album, but it's frustrating. Why? Because it's not sequenced properly. Had that record been sequenced properly, that would make it even better. But
I think a lot of artists don't understand the importance of sequencing to make a body of work, right? Because I think some artists look at an album as a body of work and they really want it to represent one thing. And I think some artists are just like, you're going to put the bangers up front, whoever produced this song, the lead single got to be number 1, or whatever the case may be. I think some people have different approaches. I love an album, like, I also love interludes and I think little sequencing in between, because I think that really brings the body of work together. So if I think about some of my favorite Janet albums or TLC albums, like I feel like they did such a really good, even Brandy albums, they did such a really good job of like finding those moments to put those interludes in. It like helps tell the story. You know?
I agree. It makes it an immersive experience.
Yeah. And
I agree.
A lot of artists, they miss that. They don't really understand that. But I think it's just different artists, right? Like some artists are just more
conscious of that. I think you know what record comes to mind I'm thinking of that did a really good job with that was Janelle Monáe's last record, The Age of Pleasure. I love the way she sort of put that together. It's a very brisk record, but it's like a song cycle. It starts in one place, it goes to one place, and it sort of brings you back and takes you back down. And I love that.
I didn't really listen to that one, but I feel like on a Electric Lady and Dirty Computer, I kind of
okay, I could see that. Yeah.
From those, like, I really felt like, okay, you're telling a story. Like, I like that when I feel like, okay, you're giving me a full concept, you know, like a full experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, but Janelle, has an understanding of album sequencing across all of her work. So I would agree with that. Electric Lady is great. I love that interlude.
So the key takeaway is, artists, you need to really sequence your albums and tell us a full story.
Yes.
So we can walk away thinking, what an experience.
Yes, I would agree with that. Totally. I think that brings us to our next thing, the album artwork and visual concept. I think I know how I'm going to answer this, but I'm going to let you lead off on this and share what you feel about what you'd want your En Vogue album to look like in terms of how the look would connect with the sound.
Bad bitch. That's it. It's just diva, bad bitch, like, you know, fashion, high fashion, drama, hair, body, legs, face beat, waist snatched, you know, all the, just diva, I still like, I guess, well, you can't see it. Well, maybe you can since we're on video, but do you see what I have over there in the corner?
Yeah, I see Janet and En Vogue.
Funky Divas. Like, that album cover to me is like just diva personified. Like, that's what I would go for.
Yeah, I mean that's a great album. I mean, for me, I kind of would like something pitched between the look of EV3 and Electric Cafe. So present day, but I like the Afro-punk element or the futurism, but with the chic twist. The thing I like about EV3, as I've said in the previous episode, the colors. I just love the whole feel of that. And that's one of the things I like about that record, both the sonically, the visually, and how it sort of connects with parts of the sonic elements of that record. So I'm open to anything as long as, you know, again, they're sort of themselves. I mean, I did enjoy the campaign for Electric Cafe, but I definitely would love to see them continue to sort of experiment and tweak that and push it forward, because I think there's something there that they can explore a bit further. So yeah, I think, you know, gosh, trying to think, like, what is his name? Mike Ruiz would do some good work with them, I think. Yeah, he did Kelly Clarkson's a few of her album covers. I think he did Bette Midler. And I'd love to see them work again with, Matthew Rolston did, obviously, For Your Mind and Whatever, but he did one of my favorite Gloria Estefan albums, the Gloria album. And he did two versions. He did the tight shot of her face with the LP cover, but the other shot, which is on the back version of the American pressing, but it was the international cover, is her on one knee. And they had kind of painted her body with this pale makeup, and she had her hair blown out to this big afro, and she had a big orchid in her hair. It was gorgeous. It was really pretty, kind of like a pale lime green kind of thing. And it was very simple and very understated. And the first Wyclef Jean Latina collaboration with Don't Release Me, a whole 7 years before Shakira.
Are there any specific, like, I know you said photographers, Mike Ruiz or Matthew Ralston, any, like, specific designers?
I'm open. Whatever, I mean, you could do vintage, you could do designer. I don't really discriminate, as long as whatever looks good and whatever is them.
I would just Google, like, who makes clothes for bad bitches? And
well, I mean, this is your album, so you have the complete
who makes
freedom
clothes for bad bitches? Because that is what we are wearing, okay?
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're bad bitches, so you gotta, sometimes you just gotta step into your power. and do it. You know, I will say this. One of my favorite eye makeup experiments, which people tend that I loved, was the way Cindy wore her makeup on the Masterpiece Theater cover, the red, the way they kind of had it like on some side, her eyes to the side of her face. I thought that was very dramatic. I always thought that was really pretty.
That Masterpiece Theater, that cover is just triggering because I don't know why they played with Maxine like that, but
I just always thought it was an angle thing. But I mean, I knew it was Maxine, but I like that cover. It's a really pretty shot of them. But it'd be also kind of nice to see them sort of do something that maybe looked back to the past, but also moving forward. Like when Janet did her 20YO album, I liked how she had the different shot. And I think that would be a nice way to sort of embrace. That's something that I would like to see from En Vogue, is to really embrace their legacy, which it was nice. You know, they kind of did the little hat tip to Soulflower on their social media platform, which is great. And they put up the old EPK. But I'd love to see that, just all the different lineups, and just to say, you know, to Dawn, to Maxine, to Amanda, thank you, Cindy, Terry, Rona, and we're here still, and we're moving it forward. I think there's something about that. I think by embracing the past,
people would take that as shade. No, like, you know how people get like, oh, they're standing around the old pictures and like the girls aren't there. And I just think they may not mean it as like shade, but I think people would interpret it.
Not if they're doing it in a loving way. I think if you do it in a way and it comes across, I mean, there's always going to be someone who's going to want to stir the pot. So what can you do? They're stirring the pot now. You know, like people do, they're stirring the pot about En Vogue. There's always someone stirring the pot about En Vogue. I see it as them embracing, like, I don't know, like I have this Supreme set, the two sets they did for their 70s records are hard to find now, where they split the 70s albums into two groups, the Jean Terrell years and then the final sessions. And in the very last page of that set, it says a final word. These are the only women who have ever been Supremes. And it lists every single name of every Supreme with a little time thing of when they started as a Supreme and when they ended. And all 9 women are represented. And and it's got the actual insignia of the Supremes, which is sort of the 3-head sort of like butterfly figure, which came to prominence in the 70s. And I love that. I love that's how they ended that set. You know, like, this is it. Like, all of these women have contributed to this rich legacy. And I think something like that would be fantastic for them, because you're showing love to Amanda, to Dawn, to Maxine, that these women have contributed major and minor to the story. We're still keeping the tradition going. I love it. But so that's just for me. You get the bad bitch thing. I think that's perfect for you. And I would still get into that. Like, so I'm not saying, so let's go bad bitch. Like, let's do it. And I think, you know, there's room to do both. They can do your record and then do mine after, and then everybody's happy.
So with any album that's released, right, you got to have like a strategy. You know, you got to do the talk shows and the social media campaign and the tour, all that stuff. So like, what's your album release strategy, the marketing promotional efforts? Like, how would you promote this album?
Again, as I mentioned, I've been in Jennifer Lopez land, and I've actually really loved the way she's done this project. I love the SNL thing. I love the Apple Music concert. That's what just sold me on going to see her for a second time. I think there's so much that En Vogue could do. I'd actually love to see them do a behind the scenes of them recording and making the record. Because this would be how many albums for them now? How many are they in all together?
So you got Born to Sing, you've got Funky Divas, you've got EV3, you've got Masterpiece Theater, you've got
En Vogue Christmas,
Soulflower,
Electric Cat. So this would be 8. So yeah, I think that would be, like, I would love to see them actually like talk about the creative process. Like, I feel like, again, and I say this respectfully, I would say it's more of a missed opportunity. Show how you create your art. Like, give access to that. I think people would be intrigued by that. I think there's something there that would be fascinating to sort of watch them sort of detail that a bit, and to show more of the creative relationship that's developed between Cindy, Terry, and Rona. And then I think also to do a really concerted, proper concert tour that's not I say this respectfully, not sort of based around the nostalgia thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but to really say like, this is the tour that we're doing for this record in the markets that we know will receive us, Atlanta, New York, Philly, Oakland, or San Francisco, wherever, and do the record justice. And I think, and to court Black media and in some of the broader white media, they might give them some space. I think that'd be a good thing. And then obviously I think a big promotional strategy that would work for them is to make sure that everything that they've done before is available on streaming. So everyone can revisit the old stuff as much as the new stuff.
I would definitely want them to do like a docuseries.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they should do like maybe TV One or OWN.
Yeah.
Or Lifetime.
Yeah.
Just something where you can really see their process, not just of like recording the album, but just all that it takes to record an album, right? Like your home life. Like if you have kids, well, I guess their kids are, Sydney's kids are grown, but just what does it take for a middle-aged woman to like, that's a recording artist, that is doing an album, rehearsing for a tour, like what is that whole process? Because En Vogue is one of those groups that has just never taken advantage of the reality space and how it can really reintroduce you to fans, how it can really kind of reignite interest in what you do. It doesn't always have to be like salacious and, controversial. You can use the platform for different things. And also, I mean, if there's not a network that's willing to create the show that you want, you can do it yourself. I mean, put it online, put it on YouTube, but I definitely think they need to document that process and let us kind of come into their world on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, I think it's about like I actually agree with that. I think I wouldn't do it as a series. I think doing it as a film would sort of be the perfect middle ground, because you still get the reality element, but I think if it's not connected to it being like a series, I think that gives it a bit more, maybe the legitimacy they think that maybe the reality TV medium doesn't afford them, but it still gives us that behind the scene access to them and to the creative process and how their professional and personal lives intersect and how they create art. But again, that's up to them. They have to make that decision. And again, that's the only constructive critique I would offer of En Vogue today, is that they need to do more of that, because unfortunately, what ends up happening sometimes is I feel like they go on these programs, they sit there and Rona they're talking about the first half of their career and they never talk about the other half. Now, granted, we all know that the more general public has the knowledge of the first half, but you can honor the first half and still flip the script and sort of give credence to, like, you've been independent for some time now, but you've continued to record. What has that process been like? Rona has been with you for 20 years. What has that process been like? Talk about those things. But these are things that I think artists come into at different points in their life. And again, going back to my time just being immersed in Jennifer Lopez land, which has been great. What I've loved about this process with the This Is Me Now album is that you've really gotten to see how she put together the record, the album, and just the whole process. And even like I took part in the listening party. She has a commentary track that you can buy with the album. And she's actually talking about how the songs were written and constructed and what served as her inspiration for using certain samples. And I thought that was brilliant. It was nice to hear her talk about her art. So that shows you that she's involved. There's a level of investment there, and that makes the fans care. And I think that's something that we need to see. I would love to see on my ideal En Vogue project, and I'd love to see it with them moving forward.
Yeah, I think En Vogue comes from the era of like, you don't give, that much of yourself, personally. You kind of keep it buttoned up, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it keeps them from navigating this current climate successfully, I mean, of course you get to tour as a nostalgia act, right? But to your point, that's just talking about the hits. There are people who want something fresh and new from you, and they're willing to be just as invested in the new stuff, as the hits, right?
Well, that was the beauty of the success of Rocket. I think that showed that there is a market there for them because it did so well at adult R&B. That was it was their first real big Billboard oriented chart hit in decades. So I think there is a interest there. It's all on how they tend to reformat. And all they really need to do is just to make a few tweaks. And I think that would make all the difference because they have everything they need right there. They've got the work ethic, they've got the talent, they've got the beauty. I think it's just going to take that little push. And I think they're starting to get that because, like I said, they actually put up the thing about the Soulflower EPK. And I actually tagged them and Rona in the thing. And I said, I hope we love to get this, on streaming. And we'd love to get a physical reissue on CD or vinyl, one day. But thank you for the music. And she responded. En Vogue liked the post, but she left like a little cute little emoji and everything. And I think, again, I say this, I think she is an asset to the group because I think she's that link to, and this is something to tie into the release promotion part. She is really their link to the contemporary realm because I think she still has a foot in that space in a way that Cindy and Terry, not because they don't want to. I just think, obviously they're not like two antiquated ladies. I think they're still very much thriving and stuff. But I think Rona brings that vivaciousness to the group. And that's something that I feel like they've slowly tapped into, but especially with the last project, but there's so much more they can do. I think they're getting there. And it just, if you hear this, ladies, we love what you do and we just want more. And you show us your beauty and skills and show them to everyone so everyone can see and enjoy and luxuriate in it like we do.
You are very Hillary Duff. Let's do it with love. Like
all you need is love. That's it makes the world go round.
So just to recap our albums, my album is the Bad Bitch themed album where there are going to be lots of up-tempos. They're going to work with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and D-Mile. Not many ballads, only maybe one or two little slow jams, but we're going to be up and popping it and dropping it like it's hot. So that's my album and your album. Oh, and it's going to be It's going to be the female empowering Bad Bitch album. And what was your album?
I think it's going to be sweet, sassy, flirty, but forward thinking. We'd love to see them joints on it with a few Foster McElroy tracks or whoever they decide from a fresh perspective. In my dream of dreams, James Ford would be a good choice. I would love tonal and variants and textures, both in the lyrics, the vocal performances, and everything, and maybe even I might say maybe a nice cover thrown in. Maybe something like something from the Emotions Flowers album, like I Don't Want to Lose Your Love. Maybe as an interlude or something would be fun. Sequencing is key, and I want to see them embrace
This is so random, but you mentioned an interlude, and I Don't Want to Lose Your Love. Mm-hmm. And I think about the Funky Divas album, and they had the Jodie Watley I Want You. Yeah, I can see the album. They're like, getting ready, and they're singing like I Don't Want to Lose Your Love. Like in the little intro.
That could even lead to them using it as a sample. That like the horn riff. There's so much that they could do, and that's the thing. I mean, and because I think they're so commercially unencumbered, that gives them wiggle room to take some chances and do some things. So, which they kind of, again, did a little bit of that on Electric Cafe. But I would say, again, sequencing, and I'd love a promotional campaign that looks forward to the future, but also tips its hat to the past in a really proper, holistic, fully embracing way. Not just Born to Sing and Funky Divas, but those two records all the way up through to Electric Cafe. So that's everybody. And really stand on faith of what it means to be in vogue in 2024 or whenever that this record comes out. That's how I would do it. Oh, and my look would be somewhere pitched between the sort of Afro-punk, Afro-futurism chic of EV3, but also the forward-thinking sort of black fashionista fashion of Electric Cafe.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've created our own En Vogue thriller album. I can't wait to see what the ladies do next, and if they take any of our advice, our tips, our suggestions, we will be watching and waiting. Yes, and make sure you share your thoughts and engage with us by emailing us at partofusevf@gmail.com. And make sure that you write us a letter. Tell us what you think. Ask us some questions.
And follow us on Twitter. No, you don't have to be messy. You can ask. We just be nice and constructive. So he's nice too. He decides if that's all that is.
Hey, thank you guys for listening. And
Thank you.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
This episode of Part of Us at En Vogue Fancast was researched, written, produced, and edited by Matthew at Culture Inject Productions. We're more than just a podcast. We're a fan community. You can keep up to date on En Vogue and chat with other fans by visiting En Vogue Craze on Facebook. You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at En Vogue Craze and Twitter at Part of Us Fancast. Part of Us and En Vogue Fancast is not endorsed by En Vogue, E1 Music, or En Vogue Records, and is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. En Vogue and its names, images, and audio clips are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective copyright holders.